go
Yep.
when I found the button. There we are.
All right. So I'll introduce
Sorry.
us and 1, 2, 3. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Trench Talk. Today, it's an actual podcast again with another content creator, Feel No Paint. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me on. It's been interesting. Certainly a wild ride for myself from December to sit into just under 2K subs now.
Yeah,
So
amazing.
tired, tired and baffled, but otherwise good. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm well. I'm well. I'm coming down with the flu, and my daughter has lice. But other than that, great.
It
uh,
always seems to be the way that if when you're feeling unwell,
yeah,
like I don't have children myself, but my friends who have kids, when they're feeling unwell, the kid decides to get something not serious but mildly irritating, which they will then demand their time for, and it becomes this whole. Well, you now don't have the luxury of being ill and sitting down and getting
yeah,
rest. You've now
yeah.
got to look after the little.
It's
So I
also
hope
always
hope
during
things
the
are resolved.
weekend.
Yeah, it's always during your downtime. I find I get ill when I have a period of rest from work because I have quite a strong work ethic. I like to work hard and get
Mm.
to where I want to be, and it's seen me through no end of different career opportunities and things like that. So I'm always looking to do the next thing and push myself forward. But then I get so busy that I think as soon as I have that rest, my body kind of catches up with itself and goes, "Oh, now you can have the flu."
Yeah, yeah,
We were
yeah.
too busy to have the flu 2 weeks ago when you were working like 50, 60 hours. But now you can have the flu. Now you've got to rest,
But
and it
those
always
are
seems to be the way for me.
good qualities to have, I think, if you want to succeed in this YouTube game.
Mm. I mean, luckily I've had in my own job I've had quite a lot of downtime through being able to take annual leave and building up flexi hours because I've worked quite a bit before now. So I've had the luxury of some spare time around the coming up to roughly now near the end of the year. So I'm furiously writing content and I've gone through three 250-page books by now. So I think I've
Yikes.
killed a small tree in terms of writing because I'm the sort of lunatic that rather than actually typing out his notes for videos, prefers somehow to write them uh, out, you know, with my hands on pen and paper, like I'm in, you know,
Old school.
yeah, like I'm in school pretty much. And
Yeah.
I don't know why I do it that way because I did. So I have something coming up where I am working with another creative team on an upcoming game. I won't say too much about it now. Suffice to say, I'm putting an announcement out later on today about me being on this podcast and also what they can expect in the coming week for my viewers.
Exciting.
Um, yeah, it is. So I'll drop a couple of teasers here. It's another tabletop game, and what we're going to be doing is in the background of my videos or in the edits of my videos, I may have like a random miniature for the game knocking around. There's little Easter eggs going to be put into the videos over the next couple of weeks into April. So, in some of the audio drama series that I do, where, maybe it's the investigation series or it's the Tales of a War Prophet, there might be an offhand comment or a slightly quiet bit of audio that maybe is a teaser for the game coming up, or someone might see a bit of a pause or a skip in the edit, and maybe that's a very small frame or two of an artwork for that game. And if they pause it at the right time, they might see something. So people are going to have some eagle eyes and some quite
So
focused
you need
ears
to be like
over the
Sherlock
next couple
Holmes
of.
or
Oh yeah, I want it to be this sort of like nice little mystery game for some of the viewers when I announce it, and people can be looking at the videos and going, I wonder what that is, because it might be that there's a miniature that looks like it could be of many of the miniature games that we're accustomed to, and if it's in the back of shot, um, maybe it is a French Crusade, maybe mini, maybe it is a an Age of Sigmar mini or a 40k mini, something like that.
Mm.
Or maybe it's from an upcoming game that you haven't seen yet. And I will refuse to elaborate in all comment sections about whether or not the mystery minis that are going to start appearing in the videos will
Yeah,
be those.
but
So I want that sort of speculation to come.
if I hear you right, you are from England, yes?
I am, yeah.
Are you from the miniature capital Nottingham or no?
I'm not. So I live about 50 minutes on the train away from Nottingham.
Mm.
So for me, the area from Nottingham to Manchester, Sheffield, and maybe like the Leeds area is this sort of bizarre golden triangle of wargaming. And you've got Barnsley as well that have got a little bit of a wargaming scene, and it's this odd thing where there's a lot of miniature games, a lot of wargaming stores around us, and I'm not entirely sure why that might be, but there are a lot of old indie stores that got a lot of us into the game, and now they're getting success and they're being resurgent, and that's quite nice to see.
Mm.
But there's also, because we're so close to Nottingham, there's a hell of a lot of really high quality painters.
Yeah, I
So
can imagine.
if you're an average painter in our scene, you're probably a pretty good painter in a smaller scene,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
quite nice for me to now start to stand out as a miniature painter and start to get more commission work and things like that, and
Mm.
a bit more recognition for my work with the brush, because I've only been back in the hobby and back painting for maybe about 4 or 5 years now, after quite a long hiatus from Warhammer 40k in my university and college years. So yeah,
Yeah, but
I'm
I feel the
quite
same.
excited to be back.
But I don't live in England or the miniature capital, but I live in a small town in the northern of Sweden. Uh, but it's
You're not in
absolute.
Amir, are you? Because you all live there.
Where?
Are you in Amir?
Yep.
Amir.
Yes.
So you've got the Squidmar boys. You've
Yep.
got a lot of a lot of good quality painters are from Amir. It's like this
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
odd miniature painter hangout place,
Yeah.
and I
I
see a lot of
think
Swedish painters there.
the
Sorry, go on.
reason is that we have like a store that's been here since the 90s, and they've had 2 Warhammer tournaments every year since the 90s. So
Mm,
it has grown the community like in the small town in generations now. So as you say, we have Squidmar and we have like Jonas Widén, and we have like some of the world's best. Yeah, the world's best Age of Sigmar player Ronja is from Umeå. So we have like
mm, yeah.
lots of top quality Warhammer player. And if you want to go to this tournament and compete in either painting or playing, you're facing like the best people in the world. Like Lucas and Emil is there with their best in show army every time.
Mm.
And those aren't even the best. Like
No, I've seen a few of their videos where they've gone to a local tournament, and they've said it's a local painting tournament,
Hmm.
and they've maybe come like third.
Yeah,
And you think
it's
the quality
insane.
there is insane. Like I've it, but I think that it's very similar to the location I'm in. So I'm in Sheffield, and we have Patriot Games, which is a massive um, grassroots wargaming scene that has been around since I think the late 80s, so probably a little bit before the Yamir scene, and it's responsible for getting a hell of a lot of people in the hobby.
Hmm.
And then we also have the Outpost as well, and our own Element Games and a couple of other independent stores like War Games Emporium. So I think it's within about a 3 mile radius, we have about 6 wargaming stores plus a Warhammer store. So there's this incredible concentration of miniature painters and miniature hobbyists and things like that. And I think, it's because these sort of things have been around for 20, 30 years and they've caught that growth of the community and they've been there at every point for people. I mean, there are people coming into our local gaming stores now that have had their own kids. I went to school with them. They've now got children. And they're now getting into the hobby, and
Yeah.
they go into the same stores that the dad went to. I'm going to the same stores that my brother went to. My brother's 10 years older than me, and we've.
Heritage.
It's nice to see that. Yeah, there is a real heritage behind the wargaming scenes in some places, and it's a shame that not everywhere has that. But I'm incredibly lucky to have it for me, and I'll champion every one of our local stores every time because they have done so much for the hobby scene and so much for the tournament scene as well, and just the publicity and sort of driving force they are for our wargaming scene around the area and also nationwide and for some companies globally as well. Yeah, it's an incredible scene that I'm in, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
You mentioned earlier that you played 40K as your main game before, and I imagine
did.
it's very popular around there. But how are you playing Trench Crusade actively there in the stores now, or how is the scene?
I am. So the Trench Crusade scene here is a little bit. It's growing. It's young, but it's growing. So I started a campaign in December last year, just before I started the channel. I started the channel December the 4th was the first videos I started uploading, a couple of shorts. And I started a campaign just before that, at the end of November. And there was about 4 of us at first, and now it's up to 6. I've just been at a demo day demonstrating the game to a lot of people, and we've had some interest in that. And people have already started jumping into Discord and going, I'd forgotten I bought these minis a couple of months ago. They've been sitting on my shelf, and I've not had anyone I've been able to play with. I've come down to this demonstration day today. They've met myself. I've gone through the game with them. Now they're in the Discord saying, "Oh, I'd like to come. I'd love to come down and join the campaign, or I'd like a demo game." Some people, I'm at ChillCon next week, and I'm running demonstrations all the way through ChillCon. So we'll be there from opening right up until close with 3 people demonstrating French Crusade all day. We might rotor it on and off a little bit, as I'll need to have a bit of a rest and go and talk to a few of the content creators and go and catch up with a few people. We bring in a quite up and coming cosplayer with us. He's going to be dressed in full Mandalorian armor. So we've got charity projects that we've got going on the table that, though we can't sell the raffle tickets for and things like that, we can at least talk about and publicize. There's going to be a lot happening at our table. So if anyone is listening to this and they're going to be around the Sheffield area and they're attending ChillCon, come and find me. There's a lot to be going on. Also, at Salute as well this year. So at Salute, tied to that game that I briefly touched on earlier, if someone were to find me at Salute and were to ask me a code word question, which is, what year is it? They might get something, they might not. I won't talk about what that might be, but there could be some information that they may get down at Salute, and I want this Easter egg hunt to continue for that. It's going to be very exciting, and I'm building a terrain board for the game as well, so there'll be a video on that.
Is it a Jumanji game?
Sorry?
Is it a Jumanji game?
Is it Jumanji? Oh, that would be cool. Can you imagine a war game set in the Jumanji universe? I'd love that.
Yeah, I can. I imagine you building the actual Jumanji board.
Oh, and it all folds out, and then there's like I don't know, like a pop-up terrain and all that sort of thing. Now that would be really fun, um, but no, it's not, and unfortunately, it's not because I would now actually quite like to make that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I was thinking of the "What year is it" meme from the.
oh, right, right. No,
No,
unfortunately, it's
ah,
not. It's not
all right.
Jumanji. But I would have loved it to have been because that would have been really funny. Um, and you could have had a yeah, that would have been quite good actually. Why has no one made that? Where's that game? Jumanji's quite a lovely little. Well, I say little franchise. It's quite big. It's globally known. It's
But at least
been a
for
part of a lot of people's lives.
90s kids.
Yeah. Well, they remade it a few years ago, didn't they? And to be honest, they're not bad movies. Um, I mean, The Rock is The Rock in every movie that he's in, but the rest of the movie wasn't bad.
I have not seen the remake actually, but
No, they're not. It's got Kevin Hart and The Rock in,
yeah, but
and
holy shit, is it worth watching?
to be honest, I quite enjoyed them.
Okay.
They are, but they if you go into it with no expectations and seeing it for what it is, like a fun exploration of something that I we would have watched in our childhood and we would have enjoyed. Maybe it's not necessarily a good movie for us as adults now,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
to put it into context of what it is, I thought they did okay with it, and maybe I think they handled it all right. It it didn't it didn't take too much from the original. It didn't try to rework anything.
yeah.
Didn't try to do anything in a different direction necessarily, or too big of a divergence. And it wasn't like a anything that ignored the originals either. I thought
Yeah,
it had they could stand alone from each other, exist in the same space, and both be appreciated for what they were,
yeah,
the original and the remake.
yeah,
But you have gone off topic,
yeah.
and
A little bit. Go back from
we've now
Jumanji
appeared.
to
Yeah,
Trench
let's
Crusade.
go back from Jumanji back to Trench Crusade. But before that, we need to go back to 40k. So you asked me about sort of the games that I'd come up playing, and also had I had a lot of time to play Trench Crusade. I have. I play Trench Crusade weekly, and we have got a number of games going on. I keep making war bands,
Mm.
and I keep trying to break those war bands around one silly theme.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Me
Um,
too.
I also keep trying to hit back the official minis into weird things or things that I think should be cool in the lore, but we don't have an official mini for yet.
Mm.
So, like for example, my Prime Anchorite is this guy.
Mm. I love that shield,
But
man. It's.
people,
Mm.
thank you. Well, people will notice that his body's not an Anchorite body, and obviously that shield isn't, because he's made from the parts from a heavy mechanized infantry and an
Oh.
Anchorite, but it's Anchorite size. So I had the heavy mechanized infantry blown up, and
Mm.
then because I don't digibash, I'd like to learn how to digibash, but I also like to physically get hold of minis. I decided I would blow up. I would get my friend who does me the prints. We bought the STL together, and he has a 3D printer.
Mm.
So he bought some STLs, I bought the others. The
Mm.
deal was we swap them. He prints me the stuff. That was quite nice. Um, but yeah, I thought, right, we'll blow that up, and then I'll chop it to pieces and have bits of resin flying everywhere because
Yeah, yeah,
as soon as you take
yeah.
anything to
Watch your
resin,
eyes,
it
man.
either shatters. Oh yeah, I mean, I was kit bashing the other day, and I couldn't find my saw. So I've done. So I did a big heavy mechanized infantry to make into an anchorite, and now I've done a tiny anchorite to make into a little mechanized anchorite heavy infantry. Um,
A
and that's
reverse
my so that's going
anchorite.
yeah. And I'll talk about my idea about it in a second, but I'll be doing a video on how I did this and how I kit bashed it and what sizes we had to make those miniatures to make it work. But my idea was that in the lore we know that the uh, war pilgrimage of Saint Methodius and the Saint Methodius monasteries. They made the first anchorites. They have all the designs for them. It gets destroyed and attacked by the Death Commandos. Brother Akakios, he runs off and takes the designs with him, but they start innovating on those designs. Now, at the time that the monastery is destroyed, the church doesn't mind, and the princes of the church don't want to reinvest in creating the monastery again because they're working on the first mechanized heavy infantry. Well, at some point, either a mechanized heavy infantry looked like an anchorite, or an anchorite had elements of the mechanized heavy infantry. So it stands to reason that at some point, either an anchorite looked like that, or the first heavy mechanized infantry, the Mark Ones, looked like a tiny anchorite with different legs on.
That's very true.
It just made sense to me. I mean, and then I did something really silly, which was I made a giant anchorite. I keep making anchorite. So
you can only fill two, right?
Not with a Saint Methodius warband. So you can fill two, but then if you get a patron skill and you have to learn a saint in campaign, you can up the limit of the unit, which means you can field more anchorites per elite that gets that skill. But if that's the scale of a normal anchorite, that's the scale of my grand anchorite.
Ooh la la.
Yeah, so he's a big. That just fell off the wall. We'll ignore that. It keeps doing it, and the fact that it's Freddy Krueger is quite worrying because it's like Freddy keeps trying to attack me when I'm recording.
You're haunted.
For anybody that's interested in it, yeah. So it's just Freddy Krueger, a print of that, signed by Robert England, and it's connected to this smaller print behind me. And I'll talk about that in a bit if you like. But yeah, so this Grand Anchorite, I made it for the Saint Methodius Warband because I wanted to run it, but I can't bring myself to move away from the Procession of Sacred Affliction because I like the idea of them being nutters with tank hammers.
Yeah.
Which I find quite funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's 125% scale. If you go much beyond, I think it's 115%, you will have to redo the supports on it because as far as I'm aware, I'm not a 3D printer, but as far as I'm aware, the guy that printed me this had to rejig some of the supports because after 115%, it goes a little bit odd. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with scale on pre-supported stuff.
Yeah, well,
I have at the moment,
and it works out.
I have four printers here now. I spent the entire weekend calibrating and mixing, and I got that one to work earlier today, but it's not on now because it's loud as all saints.
Well, I got some miniatures from a friend of a friend who, again, it was a similar deal with this friend. I'll get the miniatures, you get them printed for me. And he didn't have a printer, but he had a friend who reviews 3D printers. So there are only, I think at the time, there were only 2 16K resin printers in the whole of the UK. This guy has one of them, an unreleased 16K resin printer. The quality of them is immaculate.
Imagine.
So I have a couple of 16K quality resin miniatures just hanging around in my collection somewhere. And that anchorite, the half mechanized, half standard anchorite is a 16K resin print. Quality of it is incredibly nice, and although it's got a lot of work into it, it only took me about 3.5 hours to get it to that stage, and even with the freehand, that only took me about an hour and 20 minutes. I'm reworking it for ChillCon and probably going to go live a couple of times this week, reworking it and showing people how I'm going to improve that paint job. Although the last time I went live, it went wrong and I couldn't record properly, so it may not actually happen. I might sit down with the intention of going live, and I don't know, I imagine my connection will destroy itself or something.
Yeah.
So
but
And I can't honestly remember the question. I've
no,
gone so
I'm
wildly off
not sure I
topic.
had a question, but I will have one now.
Hmm.
But you seem very involved, especially with the Trench Crusade lore. But how far back did you get into Trench Crusade? Like, Did you play it before the official launch, like the beta rules on the? Yeah.
No, so my interactions with French Crusade started around the time of the. It was a communicant and the ammo priest were like tested out on
Yeah.
Kickstarter.
Yep.
So I'd seen them then, and I believe my brother bought the STL when he had a 3D printer. And then that was what, maybe about 2 years ago. And then the Kickstarter came out, and I got very heavily involved in some charity projects and lost track of time due to painting commitment. Lost track of French Crusade because at the time it was only 2 miniatures. There wasn't anything coming out for it, and I hadn't seen a lot of the art. I'd seen a little bit of it. I'd caught a little bit of Mike's work, um, but not a great deal. So I kind of forgot about it until the back end of last year. And I've always had this thing, this aversion to learning more miniature rules and miniature games than 40k, because 40k traditionally has had a lot of rules float. But my own personal opinion, I'll probably catch quite a bit of hate for this, is that 10th edition and the 9th edition were probably some of the better editions,
Mm.
because I see it in terms of I want the game to grow, I want the game to be popular and successful. I love the old madness of old Hammer 40k. I started
Mm.
in the third edition. I'd had interactions with it before then, but I was only 8 at the time when third edition came out. So, 30, coming up to 34 this year, I've had about 21 years in the game. No, that doesn't make sense. Anyway, I've had a number of years in
Mm.
the game, and I will be able to do maths when I'm less tired. Um, but yeah, so my interactions with Warhammer and the lore of it go back about 20 some years, and I had this sort of set in my mind that I didn't want to learn a new rule set. I didn't
Mm.
want to have to start painting new miniatures. Warhammer's an expensive hobby. At the time, coming up through my 20s, I didn't have a great deal of disposable income through various different things. You're in university, you've started getting interested in women, like things are taking up your time and your money, and because you're studying, you're not working a great enough job and earning the income to support a Warhammer hobby and also then something else, and then maybe do a little bit of other stuff. So I was a bit set in my ways, and then the back end of last year, something about French Crusade caught my attention
Mm.
because it was gathering momentum
Mm.
incredibly fast, and there weren't there weren't many mentions of it in my local scene, but there was quite a few people who were talking about it online, and I was seeing a lot of the artwork. I'm quite um, I'm quite entrenched, excuse the pun, but in the Instagram painting scene, quite a lot of larger Instagram accounts than myself that lean very heavily into the grimdark,
Mm.
and they were talking about it. And
Yeah.
we're all going to salute this year, and we've got a community table, and I started seeing like someone sharing a piece of artwork from Mike, and I
Mm.
thought, I've seen that before.
Mm.
I can't place where I've seen it. And then I saw the communicant and tank hunter, and I went, that's where I've seen it. I remember the original
Mm.
Kickstarter. So I started having a Google and having a look around on Instagram. And then I saw the Observer, which is probably one of my favorite miniatures of the whole range. And I don't really know why, but it's one of my favorites anyway.
It's a good
But
pose, solid pose.
yeah, I think it's just that sort of thing where I imagine the person in that helmet doesn't care who you are. If you step a little bit closer, you're going to have a bad time. It's that sort of. He's not necessarily physically imposing. He's not uh, a large character. He's probably one of the smaller sculpts of the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
range,
Mm.
and he looks standard human size. Not very many things in French Crusade are a
Mm.
standard human, as we know with the Metachrist program and all the weird things going on as well. But there was something I think menacing about the simplicity of a man standing there with a spear
Mm.
and a weird helmet.
Yeah,
Um,
even without
that caught my
knowing the
interest.
lore, you can tell that it
Mm,
is
yeah,
menacing
even
and it
without.
is deadly.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think there's a lot of pieces of the lore and pieces of the artwork that you look at, and you might not have much exposure to the rest of it in the wider context. But the Lions of Jabir, for example, I mean, I keep painting them. I have many, many Lions of Jabir now. But you look at the artwork for a lion of, I've
Mm.
got three, two of them are stood there looking at me, and it feels like they are. They're in that sort of hunting pose where they look like they crouch down, and I've put them positioned right behind the camera, so I am being stared down by loads of miniatures at the minute. And what you can't see are the horrific sculpts that I've made over the years, which is worrying that it's come out of my own mind because no one made me do that, and the kits didn't make me either. Um, but yeah, there's something about the artwork where you look at some of the miniatures or you look at some of the art and you go, that that is something I want to know more about,
Mm.
even if I don't want to know anything else about the rest of the setting. But of course, as soon as you start looking into any of the units, you'll start getting drawn into the setting and
Mm.
the whole feel of the verse. Because as a 40k fan, I love a bit of body horror. I love, the Thing. I love H.R. Geiger's work. Um, Akira is a big piece of anime work for
Yeah, yeah,
myself,
yeah.
yeah, I like the body horror aspect of French Crusade. I like how everything is just a little bit off kilter and weird.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
was
they've taken something. Sorry, go ahead.
last year before the game released. I was just like 2 months before the Kickstarter was even announced. I think like I was getting
Mm,
into it, and Scanner Barkley was like full steam ahead making lore videos about every single unit in the game
mm,
and like showing the pictures, and I was just listening to it all day every day, and my
mm.
headphones got like out of battery. I was walking around my job like listening to that, and I after a while I figured like if anyone else hears what I'm listening at, they this is not okay, this is not fine to listen at a
Yeah,
workplace.
yeah. So that's very similar to me. So Scanner was one of my first introductions to the French Crusade lore because I again, like yourself, listen to lore at work and things, and I listen to a lot of 40k audiobooks at
Mm.
work. I'm a big fan of the Orc, and listening to the Orc books in work on the
Mm-hmm.
odd occasion where my headphones have run out of charge,
Yeah,
and something, the Orcs are off the deep end in terms of some of the things that they'll do, and listening to some of the things in work, your headphones run out, and now all of a sudden everyone sort of looks at you. I'm sorry, I'll turn that
yeah,
down
yeah,
now, and
yeah.
then you have to stop listening. But I started getting into French Crusade lore and doing the same thing, and it was spending a couple of hours on my shift while I'm working at the laptop, just listening to lore because my day job is a bit mentally taxing. It's a lot of data that we're processing and going through,
Mm.
and I can't talk about that and won't
No.
talk about that on here. But yeah, it's just something to help sort of break up the rhythm a little bit
Yeah.
and give me something to block out the sound of the office. And I found that Scanner's videos were a good introduction to French Crusade. I
Yes,
started
very.
listening to them a lot more, and and then around December time, I started this frankly insane idea of starting my own channel,
Mm.
which I'm incredibly grateful that I did, and I wish I'd done it sooner. And what I like about it is that all of the law YouTubers, everyone is reading the same stuff, but we
Mm.
all might have a slightly different take on it. With 40k, I could read 20 books and ask you which 20 books you've read, and you've read a different 20. There
Yeah,
are
yeah, for
so many
sure.
books in 40k, and it's a massive thing of, well, where do I start with the law? Whereas French Crusade, well, you have a very definite starting point because
Mm.
everyone's looking at the same thing. The only thing that separates, I think, so I once heard it said the only thing that separates a 40k law YouTuber from a normal fan of 40k is that the law YouTuber has read one more book. I think in more in a much more smaller scale, the thing that separates the law YouTubers for French Crusade, whether we've been investigating things and deep diving into artwork of Mike's and all the descriptions like I
Mm.
do in some of my investigation series, or we just read from the PDF as some other people do.
Mm.
The only thing that really separates us is that I'm about 5 sentences ahead of you, not even an entire book. Um, and we're all kind of learning it together. It's
Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
incredibly new and evolving storyline and setting, and that's what I really like about it because
Mm.
I don't see any different law to anybody else. I don't see it first. I don't, I'd love to, but that's just not the way of things. But I will see something drop on Instagram, and then it's everyone that has this mad scramble to
Mm.
read it because it's a new law, it's a new thing, and I like how it's all slowly coming out, it's all slowly
Yeah.
building and building, and everyone's learning together. We're all growing as a community. The community is incredibly accepting and incredibly enthusiastic about the game, and it's this slow bubble and build of momentum
Yes,
that
yes.
I'm really enjoying.
Yeah, but like,
And
except the part that it is a great game. Like, I played a lot of different miniatures games the last few
mhm,
years, like Old World, Horus Heresy, Middle Earth, Age of Sigmar, 40k, Middle Marvel Crisis Protocol, Game of Thrones, you name it, like Legion. And this is by far
mm,
the easiest game to get into and really, really deep dive. And like, it's a never
yeah,
ending deep dive on it. Except if you don't uh, care about the game, it has great
mm,
lore and great art, but most of all, it's this punk DIY feel of it. Like you're in the grassroots here. Like
yeah,
these are early days. The game, we don't even have the book yet,
no,
and it's still too
that's
much
the
for us
thing.
to handle. Almost, it's already like too many sub factions for
Yeah,
us to handle at the same time.
that's the thing. Like I have done about 130 videos on YouTube at the moment. Um, about 40% of those are shorts. I've started moving more into long form content.
Mm,
I started out with shorts because I thought that was the easiest way for me to get a presence on YouTube and the
mm.
easiest way for me to manageably handle learning the law. Um, and when I started getting into longer form content, things like that, and doing a bit more deep dive, it is this grassroots of everyone's learning it together.
Mm.
Everyone's just discovering it at the same time. And how do we keep a step ahead? Because at some point we'll run out of war, but it hasn't happened yet.
No, no,
So
no.
when I've still got factions to cover, I've still got multiple things that I want to cover and want to do, and I put votes out every week for the next upcoming 2 videos. Usually, I pick the first 2 for the week, and then the channel members and channel viewers get to pick the remaining two for the week, and they pick the prime slot for Friday
Mm.
and the Saturday where we're busiest. So it's always led by the viewers' experience, and I quite enjoyed that as well. This engagement from those guys, and many of my viewers that return put stuff into the comments.
Mm.
I like the we're building that community, and it's all led from them. But yeah, it's a really strange set of circumstances, I think, because with the law, it's all slowly coming out, and you would think we would have hit by now a wall where I can't do any more videos. I'm waiting for law to come out, but somehow in probably what about 50 or 60 pages of law plus a couple of PDFs,
Mm.
there's so much to cover that I've had a YouTube channel that has covered something different in most videos for the last 6 months and still has something different to cover,
Mm.
even when I was putting out videos daily and sometimes multiple times a day when I was
Mm.
doing short content. I still haven't covered the whole book.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a testament to how well thought out the design and the setting of the game is, that there's so much to cover and so much to dive into.
The only
It's like
thing,
this.
the only thing I feel like that could stop this game and the development are like developers, because they aren't many, and if they get burnt out and feel like I don't need to do this, like I can retire this project, like that's the only thing stopping it, because
Mm-hmm.
there isn't a huge engine of, like, I don't think if Mike stops or Tomas stops that anyone can take their place. It's not Games Workshop.
No, no.
Like, we rely on them and we have to treat them well, I think.
I think the other thing as well is that if if my it feels to me like the creative side of it, if Mike left for whatever reason, French Crusade would lose its heart.
Mm.
But if Tomas left, it would lose its identity.
Mm.
It's they are they are they are Trench Crusade, and without one of them, it, I don't know how it would continue. And they,
No.
like you say, they are a small team,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's the vision of two very driven, very um, creative people that are pushing it forward. And for a small team like them, I can't begin to imagine how busy they are at the moment,
No,
because I don't
no.
think anyone could have predicted how wildly successful the Kickstarter was. I mean, I remember going onto the Kickstarter
Mm.
in just before Christmas, I think it was, to do the backer kit for my miniatures. And I was going on to the the surveys and things and putting in what miniatures I wanted and looking at the Kickstarter page, and say it was something like 20,000 at the time.
Mm.
By the time I'd put in my order
Yeah.
and looked back at the Kickstarter,
Yeah.
we're on something like 60,000. And you're talking maybe 10, 15 minutes of me scrolling
Yeah,
through.
yeah, yeah.
And it was this wild, like, climb
Yeah.
of, and eventually it topped out and started slowing down when it got to, when it got to about 2 million, as in funds,
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
started slowing down a little bit. And
I was there in the back end chat. Like, I've been a missionary for Trench Crusade. Like, we have a missionary chat, like
yes, we do. I'm also in that, but I just don't speak very much.
the discussions
um,
there were live when the Kickstarter
mhm.
was released was real. They were real fun days.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
You can scroll back and read.
Actually, well, no, yeah, I can. What I was going to say was, I can't actually imagine being Mike in that moment, and the night before the Kickstarter goes live, going, "Oh, we've put up this funny number of 66,666, as a bit of a ha-ha joke, and we might hit that.
Mm.
And maybe he has forecasts for a few 100,000. I don't know. I've not asked him. I have no idea, and I've not spoke to the man. So it would be nice to hear his take on it and how he felt in that moment. But let's say, for example, they said, "Yeah, we reckon maybe 200 grand."
Mm.
I cannot imagine how mind-boggling it would be, and also in a way vindicating for someone to have worked on something for so long and put so much passion into it.
Mm.
To wake up the next day and look at the wildness of how it was huge swings in and huge gains in backers in
Yeah.
those early opening weeks of the Kickstarter going live. Yeah, I'd love to know his thoughts waking up and going, "Oh, last night I went to bed and it was X amount of thousand,
Mm.
and I thought, oh, we'll slow down now." And then the next day it was 1 point something million. And then maybe you thought, surely it's got to slow down now. But by 2 million, you must just be reserved to the fact that you've made something that has already got a cult following. It's becoming this
Mm.
like lightning in a bottle experience. And I'd love to know his thoughts on that because it must have been wild.
Yeah, it's.
Um,
I think it's harder to describe, but might hear the truth someday. For like
yeah,
when
I'd
they've
love to. I'd love to
finally
hear it.
processed it. But if I
Yeah.
understood your interview with Thomas correctly, for all this money, they managed to hire Andy Chambers for a day, like 1 day each
Yeah,
week.
so by the sounds of it, they've got him for 1 day each week. And, we're aware that there are some books coming out for Trench Crusade, or at least
Mm.
some stories happening. And um, there we go. One of the one of Andy's works himself. I feel he's a very good author to bring to the table in this,
Mm.
and I feel like he's worked on so many games in the past. He's worked on so much lore for Necromunda, like you've just showcased
Mm.
there. Warhammer 40k, as two of the big ones that a lot of the fans will notice. I can't quite see that
Yeah.
image there, but yeah, um, yeah. I feel like Andy Chambers is a good author to have behind this, and also in the interview with Thomas,
Mm.
he mentions that Andy may be working on the Temple of Metamorphosis lore,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel
The
like for
lore or
him
the
to
rules?
be, I may have misheard him because at the moment I'm not sure whether you can attest to this on your side. I don't think my audio is great,
Your audio
and
is not
also
great. That's true.
yeah, my audio is a bit naff, and also there's a bit of an accent issue, and I echo in the room I'm in because of the tone of my voice. So I think there was in my interview. I think I was a bit nervous, but also a bit hard to understand for Thomas. But yeah, if I understood him correctly, Andy's working on Temple of Metamorphosis alongside Mike to bring us something that is probably going to be incredibly weird, but incredibly well structured and thought
Yeah.
out. I love the Temple of Metamorphosis, even though I don't know a great deal about it.
Yeah, it's something with bugs, and it freaks me out. I love it.
Well,
Like,
they're like weird reverse moths that stare at darkness rather than light,
mm.
and they've sort of they've sort of disappeared into this lost part of hell somewhere. That it seems to me like hell as the dimension that hell existed pre creation
Mm.
and pre God and stuff like that. There are older entities that we're aware of that are beyond the doorway, and it feels to me like hell was cordoned off as like a containment area, and it's not the domain of all the the domain of all the court of the seven-headed serpent. It's not the kingdoms of the Hell Lords. They see it as their kingdoms, but they're essentially just prisoners running the prison they're in.
Mm-hmm.
They're still in prison, and they are very much imprisoned by the boundaries of Hell's domains because they go beyond the doorway. I don't imagine they have a nice time beyond there because there are older entities that they've forgotten the names of, but hold a power that is more than likely far surpasses their own.
Mm.
So I don't think the doorway is a route for them to go. So they're confined within this very small pocket of a much wider, much darker and deeper, I guess, subverse. Maybe I don't know how you describe it, but like a subdimension of creation. But then they can't come out into the Levant because of the Covenant of Hell and how much Trench Crusade to me feels like a 2 minutes to midnight scenario. God's sat
Very
there
much.
with his hand above, hovering above the end it all like nuclear destruction button, and he's pausing for the moment. And the Covenant of Hell is the only thing that is pausing in. But that could change, and obviously it won't for the setting. But it's this feel of everything's hanging in the balance. Heaven has its finger over the win button, but doesn't want to destroy creation
Yeah.
because creation's vastly important. But hell is winning in the Levant, and hell is winning the war in the mortal realm. I believe. I think the faithful are on the back foot, from my own personal opinion, and
Like,
I'm not sure whether you agree with me
yeah,
on that.
considering it's
But
been the war has been going on for quite a while, and they haven't managed to break the front line. I mean, they've gotten success through the naval force and taken like Spain but I feel like since it started during the Crusades, they should have taken more ground by now. But it feels like they won't win by force; they will win through faith. They will turn in more heretics to their side.
well, see, it's mentioned in the law, though, isn't it, that one of the only reasons they haven't actually won yet is the fact that they all keep bickering amongst themselves, and
Yeah,
it's
much
the
like the Chaos
intrigue in
Demons in for
yeah,
Warhammer.
and they all subvert each other, and they're all trying to gain power. And one of the big driving forces behind it is Mammon, because Mammon is manipulating the others to argue, and because as the one that wants to hoard all the wealth, I gather he's also probably the arms dealer, and what's the best way of making money in a war? It's keeping that war going. I think Mammon has a vested interest in the war continuing, and is causing that to happen through manipulation in the court. Beelzebub is probably the most powerful demon in the setting, but has chosen to step away from the court and do his own thing. So the court aren't supported by him necessarily.
No.
So their forces aren't being led by a strong leader.
But
They are all
Beelzebub
trying
isn't
to be
interested in
roughly
ending creation either, because
sorry?
without creation there is nothing to uh, infest, or Beelzebub
Yeah,
needs
and
faithful to, or needs like organic matter at least to
mm,
infest. Without them,
yeah,
he's gone.
and, yeah. And the other thing that Beelzebub is aiming to do, I mean, the Black Grail is a source of empowerment for Beelzebub, and how that we know that a demon lord's power is directly proportional to the amount of suffering it creates and the amount of damage it can do to the mortal soul, and how it can trap them and create power from that suffering, much like the goetic magic we use in the tabletop. And Beelzebub is using the Grail to prolong the suffering on a on an individual level, and then with the amalgams and things like that, create the hegemons to vastly empower the Grail forces.
Mm.
But he's doing that because of an overall aim to subvert Yahweh as the ruler of heaven and the ruler of creation. He doesn't want to end creation, he wants to own creation. And I think Mammon probably has a similar MO. Neither of those two incredibly powerful demons want to actually win the war for hell. They want
No.
to win the war for themselves.
Mm.
And Mammon being the demon of greed and Beelzebub being the demon of gluttony. If there is no creation, they have no more wealth or
It
they
makes
have no
sense.
more food.
Mm.
So they can't do that. Um, and I feel like probably the most powerful demon in the setting at the moment that we know of is Beelzebub. The second most powerful being Mammon,
Mm.
because Mammon is the only demon in the court of the seven-headed serpent that has held his seat for the majority of the war. He's been unseated a few times. It's stated that he has. We don't know how, but he's the undisputed longest reign that there has been,
Mm.
almost uninterrupted for the duration of the war. I'd be interested to see if Beelzebub would join the court. Would he have been so powerful that he would effectively rule the court? But
At
since he
least his
stepped away,
seat. Which one is it? It's not greed. It is
well, he would have the seat of gluttony, but
gluttony. That he
he
would automatically get
he's
that if he wants.
yeah. So he has that already. He can use the seat of gluttony if he chooses, but he doesn't.
Mm.
He's actively using the seat of gluttony to cause infighting amongst his rivals in the gluttony court or in the gluttony side of the court
All right. Mm.
uh, to depower them. It's stated in part of his law that he is content to let the lesser demons than himself bicker and fight and depower themselves, because while they're attacking each other
Mm.
and fighting over a seat on a throne, he can continue to gain power and gain momentum to gain the power enough to challenge for the seat of creation.
Yeah.
Much more playing the long game.
But
I've just noticed my headphones are running out of battery, so I'm just going to turn off the Bluetooth, and it may change the audio,
yeah.
but we should be all right. Then again, though, my audio is already rubbish, so I can't see it changing that much.
Yeah.
But you should
I hear you.
still be able to hear me, yeah?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you better now.
Okay. And I am going to just turn you up because I can hear you, but not a great deal.
Mm. But
So yeah,
speaking of and the chambers and I heard that he was developing the metamorphosis. But if we're looking at Trench Crusade like rule system with like Thomas doing Mordheim and Andy's been doing the original Necromunda game, which are both heavily campaign based systems.
yeah,
And the game itself has that kind of Inquisition 28 feel to it, like the grimmest of the darkest vibes. I feel like I always wanted to have been around when Mordheim came out, but I wasn't around back then, and I played the new Necromunda a lot, but I wasn't around for the original, and it feels like this time around we can be a part of it.
yeah, I'm very similar. So I was just getting out of the hobby as Mordheim was becoming a thing, I think, and I was seeing. Well, no, Mordheim had been a thing for a while, but I was probably too young to have had much interaction with it, because my gaming at the time was very led by my brother, as he was the elder one that would get the miniatures and stuff like that, and we'd split boxes and things for maybe I had a birthday coming up, so I'd split my the launch box with him and stuff like that, and we'd get the miniatures and play. And so I was probably too young to play Mordheim, and as I was going into my hiatus from the Hobbit, Mordheim disappeared. Mordheim sort of stopped being
Mm.
supported as much. And I've always had an interest in Necromunda, but I like to kit bash. So when I was originally in the Hobbit, a lot of them were there were more metal miniatures
Yeah, yeah.
than there were in 40k. But you were encouraged to kit bash back then. I
Mm.
remember the old Tonka truck orcs in one of the old White Dwarfs, which is probably one of the armies that got me so interested in the orcs because you could do really mad things with them. Um, but yeah, I feel like Mordheim I missed out on, and
Mm.
although I could go back and I could read the rule set and I could find Mordheim, I think it would be difficult to find a group. And Necromunda, as much as I appreciate Necromunda from afar, and I appreciate the lore,
Mm.
and I appreciate the games of Necromunda. I love Hired Gun. Hired Gun was one of my favorite games of probably the last couple of years.
I've never seen
And
anyone play it except me. So it's
sorry,
great. I haven't met anyone that played the hired gun except myself.
I loved Hired Gun. Hired Gun was a really fun game, and it felt very Necromunda.
Yeah, but if it
From what I
didn't
know of
have
the lore of Necromunda,
Necromunda, if it didn't have the Necromunda atmosphere, it would been
mm.
a shite game for being like a first person shooter. It
See,
it rides on the
I
Necromunda
don't.
feel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree that it would have been necessarily bad if it was a standalone shoot 'em up. But then again, I like shoot 'em ups as a genre in general, so
Mm.
I will always enjoy a shoot 'em up,
Yeah,
even if it's probably not the best game.
yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed the whole feel of Necromunda Hired Gun, and I tend to play almost every game that I play on some of the harder difficulty settings
Mm.
right out the gate with no tutorials to challenge myself. And then because I play in a local gaming cafe and I want to support that gaming cafe, so making the game more difficult for myself means I'll be there supporting them longer.
That's true.
And
Yeah, yeah.
it takes me longer to get through a game. Like I did a while back the whole original trilogy of Streets of Rage
Hmm.
back to back on the highest difficulty setting, and then started Streets of Rage 4, and then I think it was a game ended up shifting me away from it, so I've recently gone back to it, and I'm on the last level now. The last level on the highest difficulty, absolutely battering me
Yeah.
because it's
I
it
can
it
imagine.
feels very very much like this last level throws everything at you in true Streets of Rage style, and you are really getting hit from all angles in it. And I get to a certain point in the last level, and if I haven't done the first part of it perfectly up to that point, I'm probably gonna have to restart the level. Um, because it's such a, for me at least, forgetting the controls for the new. I don't know why I did this. I played the entirety of the game, got to the last level, and only used the basic controls because, again, I challenged myself. I only use the basic attacks and things like that. I
Mm.
don't use a lot of the others, and I refuse on the first playthrough to look at any tutorials to make myself better at the game. But then I switched over to the old retro controls, and sort of muscle memory comes back a
Mm.
little bit. And
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
oh, okay, now I can do the level a little better. But I'm still working on that, and it might take me a few weeks because I don't have a great deal of time. Um,
It feels like you're describing how it is to play like in a 40k in a tournament. Like you go there,
mm,
yeah, you're meeting the best people in the world. They throw everything
yeah,
they got at you, and then like at the final game, you forget all the rules of what to do.
yeah. See, I feel like tournament play. is such an odd environment, such an odd thing. I like tournament play. I do enjoy it. I don't play many tournaments, um, so I'm not a great player, but I'm by far not a novice either. I'm decent, but I also play six factions in 40k. So I often, while I have an encyclopedic knowledge of all six factions that I play, sometimes that encyclopedia is slightly out of date.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So I have to, and I get rules a little mixed up. I mean, at the moment, I'm really enjoying Knights, and I've been enjoying Imperial Knights since ninth edition. But I'll always go back to Tyranids. I'll always go back to Orcs,
Hmm.
at least for a portion of a an edition. Um, and yeah, it feels very much like that, like you say in tournament play, where you'll get to this point where the game suddenly has a massive ramp up in difficulty because you've done just well enough
Hmm.
to have a seat at the higher table,
Yeah,
and those people aren't messing around. Whereas you went there with your silly army
yeah,
to
yeah.
have a little bit of fun and just maybe contend the best painted, maybe
Hmm.
because most of the tournament players I know either buy commissions or they'll quickly paint stuff. So I'll sometimes have a good shout at a best painted,
Hmm.
and I go there for the love of the game and the enjoyment of the game. And my enjoyment comes a lot from the painting and the kit bashing,
Hmm.
and playing it is just a way for me to enjoy the result of the painting and the kit bashing and people's reactions to it. But yeah, at some point in a tournament, you will hit that table where the game becomes infinitely harder
Yeah, yeah.
because your opponents are much better than yourself. And you go, oh, okay. Now all of a sudden, I don't seem to know how to deal with the situation
Yeah, yeah.
anymore. And it is like that in some of these retro games that I play and some of the game series as I'm playing through,
But I'm thinking with
that
Trench
I get to a
Crusade,
certain level
like,
and the game goes, I'm not messing around with you anymore. You've had this time to get to here. You should have learned by now. And I have to sort of almost learn that entire level to get through it. And I love Streets of Rage for that because it's done that since day one. It's always had final level's always been really challenging, where it throws every boss that you have come across in the game at you in some capacity, and I love that franchise. Um, but yeah, I going back again to Trench Crusade because I've once again derailed the conversation. Um, yeah, I'm really interested to see where Andy takes the Temple of Metamorphosis because if he's looking at the Temple of Metamorphosis and how it might play in a campaign, I'd be really interested to see how he works campaign rules around um, just around how the temple will work because I don't see the temple having a great many weapons. I
hmm.
see them probably being as limited in weaponry and armor as the Black Grail are. But see that means and many Black Grail players that I've spoken to have said the Black Grail is and I think this as well. The Black Grail is a great faction for 1v1s, and I consider using them in a tournament because they're a very tough data sheet. They're very hard to remove. They can hit pretty hard. I mean, the Lord of Tumors with Beelzebub's axe
Hmm.
will demolish most things in the game. But in a campaign, by maybe 5 or 6 glory points, so potentially even 3 games in, you're starting to run out of options for what you can do with those glory points because you might not always roll on the um, exploration tables to get access to the glory uh, traders and things like that and buy
Yeah.
glory items.
I played the Beelzebub Black Rail in my last campaign, and
Mm-hmm.
I think like the most important thing regarding balance and the Black Grail are terrain. Like what kind of board are you playing at? Because if you can move
Mm,
slowly through like the trenches or behind the buildings, you will be fine. But I've seen like when people play, they have far too little terrain in my opinion. They have like a 40
mm.
km game of terrain. That's not nearly enough.
Yeah,
You need at least double that to it to
Yeah,
be like Mordheim, or to be like you have to go inside the house, crawl through the window, like levels, and like I think
yeah.
that's the thinking behind the terrain in Thomas' head. If I'm trying to be the mouth of his head here,
Yeah,
I'm not sure I'm correct, but I think it's intended to be lots of hiding spots for the units.
yeah. Well, I mean, we can kind of get that inference with the that you can have an entire game board built on trench networks. You can have everything as trench
Mm,
networks, which means there are essentially two game boards going on at the same time because
mm,
you have the trench board level and you have all the trench networks,
yeah,
and then you have what's going on above the trench networks. But then potentially you could have verticality above that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So the game could potentially be being played over three multiple levels because someone has got such a well detailed trench board that then also has verticality above the trenches.
yeah, yeah.
And I've seen some people work on trench boards like that, and that they are really nice looking. Um, I went to a club in Barnsley not long ago where a guy had got a really nicely done trench board. It had that element of verticality to it. It had that feel to it. Um, and I see some players trying out this multiple levels, but like you say, I think most people, and I see this with comparisons in the lore as well. There's a huge comparison to 40k because I feel like 40k is the big reference point for
Mm,
people, and it's almost like they can't step away from that reference and go, "Oh no, this is different." It
mm,
looks very similar, but it's I can enjoy Frank Herbert's Dune
mm,
and enjoy 40k without going, "Well, Dune did that."
mm,
And it's like it's this thing where the old joke of the Simpsons did it.
mm.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
all right, June did it first, then 40k did it, and now Trench Crusade's coming along, and it's the upcoming youngster
Yeah.
version of the games. So now rather than that was in June, or that was in that game, or that was in that game, now it's 40k's blown up in popularity. Well, that was in 40k.
Mm,
That's a 40k thing. The stigmatic nuns are Sisters of Battle.
mm,
Maybe you've got an argument on that point, but
but,
the Anchorites aren't a dreadnought.
mm.
The Black Grail aren't Nurgle.
But
The
one thing
Black
that
Grail and Nurgle,
40k doesn't have is lots of terrain. Like that is Trench Crusade to me. Like,
yeah,
and
and
embrace it.
that's the
And
thing. Like, I think people look at the game and go, "Oh, I'll play this like 40k because
yeah,
the
yeah,
terrain
that's a
layout
mistake.
like 40k is. I have my board here. I've got a big building here, a big building here, a
Mm,
big building in York, and a big building there.
mm,
We've got something big in the center, then we've got a bit of scatter terrain.
yeah,
Whereas with my games, we try and have something really big in the center and built up a little bit more. We've got some verticality to it. We don't have a great deal of terrain on the board because we also want to move bases around the board. I quite like to play bigger, stronger
mm,
units and be a bit more sort of force multiplier to my unit. So we want to be able to navigate and move around the board, and I want people to be able to have a lot of hiding spots. But at the same time, I don't want to be um, having a board so congested that it just looks like we're playing on, like the tables where you go to a tournament where they put all the terrain before the
yeah,
tournament happens.
yeah, yeah.
I don't want to be playing on that table where it's just the terrain bin table. No one
Yeah.
wants that. But you don't want,
I'd rather
um,
have that though. Like, especially when it comes to the positioning of the, because Warhammer players, the competitive, they are obsessed with fairness and obsessed with uh, balance. Like even the layouts on the official cards, I think now are like you have to position that building over there exactly the same over there, so it's
yeah,
always symmetrical, and
yeah,
it just loses the game loses all charm to me. Like the world isn't fair, the world isn't balanced, and this is a
Mm,
war simulating the world, kinda, maybe. Like
mm.
it's not authentic. It doesn't feel immersive.
Yeah,
I just think it's the
I,
worst.
I, I agree. I think one of the things that I like to do sometimes is we'll put out some big pieces of terrain, and then we did a thing a few games ago where I rolled a dice pool. So I have a couple of dice, and the other person has a couple of dice, and we roll those dice, and then wherever the highest dice lands, we put a piece of terrain.
That's
And
cool.
I put that down. So if me and yourself are playing a game,
Hmm.
you have three dice, I have three dice.
Hmm.
We roll those three dice, and a dice might ping off of a building and it goes that way, and
Yeah.
it's somewhere up in the top corner. And then one might stay basically where it landed, and then another
Yeah.
one sort of down here somewhere. And I might have a six, a three, and a two.
Hmm.
And then you might roll, and you've got a six, and a four. Well, technically you won that roll up there, but then we'll roll another dice for that person, or another two dice or something like that for that person. And then where that thing lands, that's where that terrain piece gets put. And
Hmm.
it introduces this element of randomness.
Yeah, but
I've only
I
done it
like
in
it.
one or two games, but it's a really nice way of going, right, well, do you know what? We'll set the terrain board up a bit like a slightly congested 40K board, and then we'll let the dice decide where the rest of it lands.
Yeah.
So we might end up with this huge jumble of stuff right in the middle that no one can get around. Cool, we need impassable terrain, so that's where it goes. And then we need some dangerous terrain. So that was it. We were looking at craters and dangerous terrain on
Hmm.
the board. So we were just rolling random dice, and where it popped up,
Hmm.
all right, that's where a bomb hit, that's a crater. Something else. I might have two craters and um, like a bridge or something like
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
So I've got two craters and a bridge. You've got a small building and a bombed out bunker and something else. And then we roll off and we deploy all those bits. And your dice might all randomly cluster together, but you haven't rolled them there. They've just randomly clustered
Yeah. Yeah.
when you've rolled multiple sets of three dice, and that's where those dice land. My dice might be one's over there, one's down here, and one's over there, but it's random, and it's kind of interesting
Yeah.
how the
It's
board
life.
looks after a couple of dice rolls like that, and you go,
Yeah.
"What have we done here? How are we going to play on this?" I don't understand how we're going to make a game around this because we've all of a sudden kind of blocked off uh, an objective,
Yeah.
or we've made it difficult to reach an objective. Well, that's all right. We just remove one of the pieces of terrain and give ourselves an access point, but we've still created a nice congested board. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's a nice way of doing it.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. And like, but I not. We were talking about tournaments and like the fairness and everything. I'm so far I mostly played campaign mode, but I feel
hmm,
like I yearn to like try and make a tournament 5 day or like a 5 game tournament out of it where you have a set like you have 1,000 ducats and that's your
hmm,
list like to try and play this as if it were Age of Sigmar or 40k. It would be very fun to try. And I felt this when I tried out the sub faction for the Iron Sultanate with the
hmm,
assassins. I just felt like this reminds me so much because I was thinking like very tactically on how to use the fire team and what to charge and in what order. I was
hmm,
thinking in a more competitive Warhammer uh, way than I usually do in Trench Crusade, and it felt super fun. It feels like it can do both. Like
hmm.
do be this narrative fun campaign, and but it can also be this ultra competitive if you want it to be. And I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's the way to go, but I just I'm curious about it. I'm not sure how you have you played it.
So I've only really had campaign missions and a couple of standalone missions. So again, I'm coming from it like yourself in a narrative way, in a narrative play way. What I'd like is a mix between a narrative event, and a tournament. So it is a tournament, but maybe you have like 6 games through the day and we play half a campaign. But maybe during that tournament, there's something like, well, your model can get killed. So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
we start with maybe 1,500 ducats,
yep.
but we only play with
The ones that
1,000.
survive.
So we have a 500 ducat reserve tank of
Oh,
unit,
okay.
um, and you have to record, with with the other player. You both have to agree on the sheets to submit to the judges which units died out of it. So there's a log of, well, game one, player one had his lieutenant die for his new Antioch warband, and he had um, I don't know, heavy machine infantry die. But it's a narrative event, so he can't now have another machine heavy infantry come into the game because it's not like a campaign. He hasn't earned them
Mm,
in with his thing. So he's now lost that unit for the campaign. So in his reserves, you
mm.
have to account for that and think, right, well, what's
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
resource management for this tournament? Maybe we have something where in your main list, your overall list has to adhere to the limits, except for your elites, in which case you can increase the limit by one.
Mm.
But one has to be a reserve, and one has to be in the main list.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can't play them both, but you can have two lieutenants in your New Antioch force, because if your lieutenant died and you didn't have a trench cleric,
Mm.
well, you're now technically playing with an illegal warband.
Mm.
So there has to be that element of, well, we'll give you so many points for an elite unit in reserve and also some extra units. But equally, you could do bad in every game, and now you're playing a warband with um, very injured or very damaged models. They're pretty much useless at this
Yeah.
point. And rather than
Brain
having the 10 that you
damaged, no
started with,
eyes.
yeah, rather than having the 10 that you started with, you've now got 4 guys and a dog,
Mm.
and no one's got a gun because everyone died, and now you've got some poor guy with a trench shovel, and the other guy over the other side's got a
Yeah.
grenade. And what are you going to do in this game? Because it's going to be so mad resource wise, but you might win because you might get a game where you're the defender. And I feel like a lot of the games where the defender player, and it's a defender and attacker,
Mm.
they are more weighted towards the defender winning because there's a lot of layers on top
Mm.
for them to
Mm.
defend their position.
Like mines
So
and.
maybe someone with this really defeated warband goes into a pool of people with other defeated warbands, like a normal pairing system,
Mm.
but the one with the lower warband count, the lower model count, because everybody's been dying at this point,
Mm.
automatically becomes a defender in every game. So now they are literally fighting to survive in the tournament and fighting to try and fend off other people over the course of these 6 games. And maybe your entire warband dies and now you're out the game.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you don't get a game 6 because,
You're dead.
sorry, mate, you're dead. Or maybe you do incredibly well right up until the end games of the tournament.
Mm.
And now it gets serious and now it gets difficult, like we were saying earlier. And all of a sudden, you haven't given yourself room to maneuver in your reserve tank. So maybe you played a new Antioch force. I played Papal States Intervention. So maybe all my valuable, powerful mercenaries are in my main warband. None of them are in my reserves, and
Yeah.
maybe all my mechanized heavy infantry are in my main unit list. But they've died now, and now I'm on yeoman for the final games, and these are the decided games of the tournament. So how do I play now? And I think it could be that really interesting thing of, right, here's your resources for this tournament.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
have to
Super
manage them, and you
interesting.
have to really consider how you're going to field in
Yeah.
every game. And
I
in
have to
every
remember
game, we have
that.
like, maybe it's a 2 day event, maybe it's 6 games, 3 games each day with a good period of time between them
Mm.
to register warband changes,
Yeah.
i.e., substitutes and deaths,
I feel
with
like
the
the
tournament go down.
less downtime like in a campaign, the thing that takes time is like writing down, rolling,
Yeah,
blah blah blah. Like if we can narrow that down to as little as possible, it would be good for the tournament. But
yeah.
I'm not
I,
sure
I
how
think
to.
what you do in that narrative tournament setting is you get rid of the explorations, you get rid of the
Mm,
experience, you get rid of the battle scars, and maybe you'd have a rule about battle scars that if all the elites are dead, then they have to have an elite, so they will have an elite that has
mm,
battle scars, so they can stay in the tournament with a legal list.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I feel like reducing it down and going, okay, you don't need to roll exploration, you don't need to roll experience,
mm,
you don't have all this admin because you've done the admin before.
mm,
What you've done is you've given yourself a resource pool of 1,500 ducats, and
mm.
every game is 900. So you have a 600 ducat um, substitute list
Yeah, that's
because
a good idea. I like it.
yeah, that
I have to
900 is going
remember
to die,
it.
and
Mm,
you know we'll still do rolls after the game to see if a unit dies, but the elites could be killed off just as easily as a yeoman because we're not doing experience and we're not doing battle scars, so they still die on a one or a two
mm.
if they were taken out of action. I think it would add a level of jeopardy to a tournament setting and a level of resource management and narrative that I don't think I've seen in other tournaments before.
No,
I
no,
think
me
it
neither.
would be a
Like
really nice way to run one.
Marvel Crisis Protocol has something quite similar, not really similar, but when you build a list in that, you have 10 guys,
Mm,
and all the different units can be leaders of their. So if you take Thanos, for example, and you take 4 in your list,
mm,
your warband for a game can be either 4 leader or Thanos leader, and they will play widely different depending on who you
mm,
got as the leader. And like I like the idea of having choice in your. You come with your list and you have a choice in the
mm.
game what you choose from it, depending on
Yeah,
what you're facing. But you don't know what your opponent is gonna take either. Like they might think, oh, you're bringing Thanos, so I'm taking this. But no, they
yeah,
took like Deadpool, and so.
yeah. I think that could be a thing as well. Like maybe your reserve list has to have. So let's say, for example, you play Pilgrim.
Mm,
Well, you have to have. Actually, Pilgrims is a bad example. Let's pick Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent.
mm,
So Court can be led by a sorcerer or a praetor. Um, so you have to have the praetor in the main list, or you have to have the sorcerer in the main list.
mm,
The
mm,
other has to go in the reserve list, so that if the praetor dies, you still have a warband leader.
mm,
Whereas with something like the Pilgrims, where you have to have a war prophet, well, you'd have an increase of war prophets, but maybe you have war prophet and castigator as
mm,
the main list for your leaders, and you have worse war prophet and communicant as the elites for the other.
mm,
Which the having the castigator in the list makes things a little bit more survivable with being able to get them up from being down, and makes you a little bit easier to resist morale punishment because the castigator is your orthodoxy officer. But if you switch over to your communicant and war prophet
mm.
list, well, now you've gained some pretty
Speed,
tough. Sorry,
speed.
yeah,
They're
yeah. You've
also
gained speed
faster.
and you've
Yeah.
gained a bit of toughness and a bit of melee power.
Mm,
So again, they play a little differently as well.
yeah.
You've either got more survivability or more hitting power,
Yeah.
or you could really weight it toward being a glass cannon and just hope for the best.
Yeah. But
I
but
think that
hey.
would be a nice way of doing it, and I am toying with ideas for a narrative event in the local area soon. Um, but yeah, so I'll let you know how that goes if we do manage to get
Yeah,
one set up.
it would be fun also in like maybe down the road plan something together and like host or something. But yeah, these are
Yeah,
early days still, and but I saw what the time was, and I got to we got to cancel or we have to end this somehow. So I'm figuring
yeah.
like if you had like some things that you like really wanted to say. Uh, we can do it now, and we can continue with another episode some other day, maybe.
Yeah. So we're going to have to do a part two because I feel like we could talk for quite a while.
Yeah, for sure.
But things that are coming up for me. So way before, way before YouTube became a thing for me, I've been involved for quite a number of years in charity projects. So I
Cool.
run my Instagram is charity mini painter, and I've done charity raffles. I always painting competitions on there, and we usually donate a portion of money for a good cause. Uh, for the winner, the winner's choice of charity will get some donation. Um, but I also do charity raffle. And the one I'm working on at the moment, I can't remember where I put this night, so give me a sec.
Mm?
It's Chaos Night. So I'm
Oh,
sculpting,
nice one.
hand sculpting a lot of Chaos Nights. There are going to be um, probably around 8 of them. It'll be about 1,500 points. A better example is my own Nurgle Night, that is my personal one. So you're not winning this one, and I would never give it away because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it thoroughly.
If I roll a
But
6, I'll get it.
sorry,
If I roll a 6 now, I'll get it.
no,
Nope.
no, you'd have many minus dice to get that 6. Because there we are. That's
Ooh, lovely.
so I'm sculpting a Chaos Knight army, which will go live to be raffled off for hopefully many hundreds of pounds, if not hopefully a couple of thousand, for a well-deserving cause, probably something like British Heart Foundation or St. Luke's Hospice or a leukemia charity, something either cancer related, mental health related,
Mm.
or heart related,
Is this
because they are
something
the
you
big.
host yourself, or is it someone else that are hosting it and you're contributing?
So I'll be hosting this one, but I've collaborated with other people on others. So uh, about 2 years ago, we did the Space Ducks, which was rubber duck themed Space Marines.
Mm.
Um, and so I'm painting some now, but I can't see any. So we are doing a round two of it, but I can't see the ones I'm painting because my painting desk at the moment looks like an artillery which has had a go at it with all the paints and everything everywhere. But we did rubber duck themed Space Marines, and then last year we did Def Leopards, which was um, like 80s rock themed.
Yeah. Necromunda.
Um, no, it was orcs. It was an orc army, and it was orcs with like purple leopard print on. There was a
That's
guy that
that's
did
very
the
Necromunda,
Goth
early
Rocker with.
Necromunda style.
Sorry.
Early Necromunda style.
Yeah, and like kind of Rogue Trader era style as
Yeah.
well. And it heavily leaned into that. Let's just do something daft.
Mm.
So we had one guy. He made an orc truck out of the armored containers
Mm.
that you can get for the Munitorum armored
Yeah.
containers. He made one, but the sides of it opened out on this truck, and it was like a stage. So it was a sound stage for the Goth Rocker.
Nice.
That was the Goth Rocker's battle wagon and stuff like that. So I think that went for just shy of 1,000. I think we raised for Calm, which is a campaign against living miserably. It's a mental health charity in the UK. The Space Ducks was Calm and Mind, which again are two charities. I've raised money for Sea Shepherd, which is
I
a
know Sea
ocean
Shepherd.
conservation
Yeah.
charity. I've raised money for the British Heart Foundation, St. Luke's Hospice, Macmillan Cancer Charity.
Mm.
So this Chaos Nights one, it's a collaboration between myself and quite a few other far more talented painters than myself. I'm doing all the sculpting. I reached out to a load of painters and said, "Do you want to paint a cool Chaos Night?" And I even gave them ideas on what theme their night could be. So I went to certain people, and I won't name them now because I want it to be a surprise to people, and said, "Okay, you normally paint Grimdark. So what sort of night do you want? Do you want to do a
Mm.
Nurgle night? Okay, cool. What do you want your Nurgle night to look like?" And that sort of thing. And there's a Slaanesh main night, there's a Nurgle main night, a number of Armigers all dedicated to the different Chaos gods. they'll all have something, either a big kit bash element to them or a big sculpting element to them. Obviously, that Nurgle Knight that I showed off with all the sculpting and the
Mm.
teeth and everything, that's heavily inspired by the Nurgle artwork, where he has the ring of teeth around his neck, and the head's from Rotigus, which resembles artwork of Nurgle a little more closely than Kugat does in some artworks. So it borrows a lot of lore hints and a lot of lore tidbits. Anyway, I'm going off topic again. That will be raffled off later this year, and it will be sent out to a number of very talented painters that have
Interesting.
collaborated on many different things in the past. I mean, we were at an art exhibition called Art in Miniature um, some time ago, and I met a lot of them there, and we decided I decided to reach out to them and collaborate with them on that. Um, and yeah, we're gonna sculpt and paint some very crazy things. A lot of us will be at Salute, and you will find us on a table full of nutters that keep making weird things like body horror tyrannids, for example. My
When
old
is
one eye
Salute?
is sorry.
When is Salute?
Salute is in about 3 weeks. It's
Oh.
in
Hmm.
the 14th of April, I think it is. Why were you thinking of coming?
Yeah, it just sounded so much fun. I have been hearing about Salute from all different sources, so but it's maybe next year then.
Yeah, unless you could get a flight over at last minute or something like that. Because Salute's only for a day, so
Mm.
you'd probably only be staying over for an evening. And Central London's got some decently cheap hotels. Anyway,
Mm.
we can talk about that privately and try and organise something for you if you really want to come. But yeah, that's what we're doing. Look out for the Chaos Nights. Look out for some horrific things coming to the YouTube. Some lore teasers for and miniature teasers for an upcoming game. Um, and yeah, I'll be kit bashing, painting, trying to win painting competition for Trench Crusade, and
Yeah,
out there
you and
championing the
me
game in the
both,
community.
baby.
Sorry.
You and me both.
Well, we'll have to find out about that on the next episode where we sit down and speak to each other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Potentially, you could come on to my side of the podcast, or I'm more than happy to come onto your side of the space because I think we started around the same time together.
Mm.
It will be great to see people who are on the come up with me continue to come up, and all the content creators are starting to reach out to each other and collaborate. And I feel like we're building a strong community in ourselves and gathering a good community between the content creators, and it's mirroring this collaborative and enthusiastic effort from the overall community. And I think that we should champion that and how accepting and creative it all is. And so yeah, I'll be no doubt working with you again at some point very shortly. Anyway, I am aware of the time. It is now quite late for you, as there is a time difference between us. So, is there anything that you want to talk about coming up for yourself? Because
No, no,
I'd
I'm
love
just.
to.
I'm waiting for the My Mini Factory competition to end and to get the results from the Discord competition. Because I painted like a madman for both of them, and
Mm,
really looking forward to seeing the results. And if I get a third place or second place, I don't think I'll get a first place in any category. There are too many good painters
no,
out there.
it's so this. I think Trench Crusade lends itself well to a lot of creative freedom that 40k doesn't. A Space Marine can be painted in a myriad different ways, so, as can a Tyranid, but they will always look relatively similar.
Mm,
Whereas Trench Crusade, you can have something so wildly different because the miniatures are a little bit more simpler. They are a little bit more broken down and a bit more blank canvas rather
mm.
than being decorated and ornamented to a larger degree, like some of the constant stream of lieutenants we get.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so
something
I
like
mean,
this Plague Knight that's coming to the channel as a painting video. It's live at the moment for members. It goes live to the public on Wednesday. That's a blank canvas for dry brushing. It's a blank canvas for non-metallic metal.
mm,
Any number of different things because it works so well for them all. and almost every miniature in the Trench Crusade range is a blank canvas for your creativity,
Mm.
which I think is lacking in some war games at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think the standard of painter, because of that, is very, very high. So I'm not expecting I get anywhere in either of the comps I'm in, but
Yeah.
we shall see.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but I'm happy with my Kit Bash contest
yeah, that's the
submission.
is that the Marienburg landship?
No, no, no. This is the Kalmar Union Naval Force captain and his boat.
Oh right, yes,
So
okay.
this is a kit for the Kit Bash, and it's like Cursed City miniature. Oh, I can't really tell, but yeah, there are better
Mhm.
pictures and videos out there that on the contest. But that's the one I'm holding my hopes for,
Mhm.
and yeah,
Oh,
that's
we'll have
it.
to speak about the Kalmar Union next time we have a sit down
Yeah,
and chat. And
yeah.
I'm looking forward to that conversation because we've covered a lot, but also not very much, and it's been a lot of me rambling.
But
So,
we had fun
uh,
talking about everything, anything Trench Crusade.
oh, exactly, yeah. And I think just conversations like this are incredibly valuable to the community as in some respects because it just shows that there's a lot of creativity that many of us are working on, and maybe I've touched on something that someone wants to see. Maybe yourself, you're working on something that is is in the back of someone's mind, and they want maybe our ideas on how we would run those narrative
Yeah,
tournaments.
yeah.
Or
Mm.
you're I look at some of your painting work, and you're a very accomplished painter in my eyes. So of course,
Thank you.
people are going to be following how you're doing competitions and things like that. So you know, showcase our work. Let's talk about these things. And if we ramble, that's because we enjoy it
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
we have a love of the game. I think that enthusiasm coming through is something that the community just like to see.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
hope
I
so.
think that's all I have to say because I'll keep you here all night otherwise.
But thank you for coming on. And thank you for your
It
charity
was a
work.
pleasure.
That's amazing. I'd buy a ticket for sure.
It's a pleasure, and I think I would be doing something for charity work no matter what I was doing. Um, as you know, there I have a mantra of you can't always change your own luck, but you can help change someone else's. And you know, if I can impact someone else's life for the better, I would like to do that if I
Yeah.
can. And
Yeah.
there we are. But anyway, we'll draw this to a close, and we will speak again soon because I have enjoyed this immensely, and I hope the viewers do as well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Lake.
Thank you. Bye.
See you later. Goodbye.